Welcome to our deep dive. We're really thrilled you could join us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for tuning in.
So our mission on this show is always the same. We take a stack of sources, extract the most important insights, and basically give you a shortcut to being completely well-informed.
Right. Doing the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly. And today we have a very specific, honestly fascinating source on the table. We are looking at an internal administrative document from an institution that we're just going to refer to as SOU.
Yeah, it's a brief text, but it is packed. It's essentially a rationale.
Right. It details exactly why SOU requires this thing called a major field test, or an MFT for students who are finishing their Master of Business Administration program.
Which is kind of a big deal. We are going to find out why universities are actively testing their own limits, and what that actually means for anyone who ever sits in a classroom.
Right. Because usually when you think about standardized testing, you picture the beginning of a journey. Right.
Oh, for sure. You associate it with, like, taking the SATs or taking the GMAT just to get your foot in the door of a graduate program.
Yeah, the test is the hurdle you jump over to get into the building, the gatekeeper.
Exactly. But this internal document outlines something that completely flips that traditional script. SOU is administering this major field test to students who are already inside the building.
Which is wild. These are MBA candidates sitting right at the finish line of their degree.
Yeah, they are done.
You've spent years doing coursework, writing these massive thesis papers, surviving grueling group projects.
Group projects are the worst.
They really are. And then, right as you're preparing to walk across the graduation stage, the university hands you one more comprehensive standardized test. Okay, let's unpack this. Because why would they do that?
It's a great question.
What purpose does testing someone at the exit actually serve?
Well, to understand the why, I think we first need to define the what. The document repeatedly references the MFT, but for you listening, let's visualize what these students are actually facing.
Yeah, paint a picture for us.
A major field test in business isn't just like a quick exit survey. It's not a how did we do questionnaire. It is typically a rigorous, comprehensive exam.
Like how comprehensive?
Often over 100 multiple choice questions. It's designed to measure critical knowledge across all the core business disciplines.
Wow.
Yeah, we are talking accounting, economics, management, quantitative business analysis, and marketing. I mean, it takes hours.
Which just sounds exhausting. You just finished your finals, and now you have to take a mega final covering 2 entire years of material.
Right. It's a marathon.
And this seemingly simple internal document from SOU gives us this really fascinating peek behind the curtain of higher education to explain why they put students through this.
Yeah, it reveals exactly how a university thinks about itself, how it views its students and its value in the real world.
So, reading the text carefully, it acts as a very deliberate, strategic roadmap for institutional self-reflection.
It really does. It outlines a complete ecosystem of accountability. We are basically looking at a masterclass in how an educational program justifies its own existence.
Both to the outside world and to itself.
Exactly.
Well, let's start with the outside world, because before we even look at how this test affects the students sitting at their desks, we really have to look at the macro-level pressures on the university.
Yeah, the big picture stuff.
According to our source document, the very first reason SOU requires this major field test is to meet requirements for accreditation and accountability initiatives by measuring the effectiveness of the MBA program.
And that is the foundational pillar of the entire document. I mean, everything else they do builds on that primary need.
Because accreditation isn't optional, right?
Not at all. It is not a luxury for an MBA program. It is the absolute baseline for survival. Without it, degrees lose their value, students can't get federal financial aid, and the institution's reputation just crumbles.
Right. I was thinking about how to visualize this pressure for you listening, and the best way I can describe it is to compare it to a high-end restaurant getting a Michelin star review.
I like that. Or like a really rigorous health inspection.
Yes. It is not enough for the head chef, or in this case, the university's professors, to stand in the dining room and swear up and down that the food is fantastic.
Because the chef is entirely biased.
Of course they are. They design the menu. Obviously, they think their own menu is brilliant. To prove the quality, you need an external objective standard coming in to take a look under the hood.
Yeah, and let's take that restaurant analogy a step further. The health inspector or the food critic doesn't just read the menu and assume the meal is good.
Right. They actually taste the food.
Exactly. In higher education, the professors design the courses, they teach the material, and they grade the students. If they were the only ones evaluating the program's success, it would be a completely closed loop.
A self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, where the person teaching you also decides if their teaching was effective. The phrase accountability initiatives in the document is crucial here because it shifts the entire burden of proof.
It forces them to prove it to a third party.
Yes, and that transforms the whole function of the test. Traditionally, we think of a test as grading the student's mastery of the subject, right?
Did the student learn what we told them to learn?
Exactly. But an accountability initiative means the test is actually grading the program.
Wow, so the test is taking the university's temperature, not just the students.
Right. It is holding the institution accountable for delivering the high-level business education it promised when it took the students' tuition money.
Think about that for a second. The students are the ones sweating over the multiple choice questions, but it is the university's report card.
It really is.
For you listening, think about the last time you took a mandatory corporate compliance training or maybe a certification course. Did you feel like the quiz at the end was actually evaluating the quality of the course itself?
Probably not.
Right. Or were they just making sure you didn't fall asleep at your keyboard? SOU is using this test to answer the ultimate question. Is our MBA program actually cooking what is printed on the menu?
But here's the thing. Checking a box for an external accreditor doesn't actually help the students sitting in the classroom today.
That's true. It's just a metric.
Right. So once SOU satisfies the state boards and oversight committees, they are left with this absolute mountain of data. And the document explicitly details what happens next.
They turn the mirror inward.
Exactly.
The text states the MFT is used to evaluate and inform teaching and learning and pinpoint strengths and areas of improvement to strengthen curricula and student learning outcomes.
That's a lot of academic jargon.
It is, which is why I want to get into the weeds here. Because strengthening curricula sounds great in a brochure, but how does that actually work in practice?
Right, like practically speaking.
Yeah. If an entire cohort of MBA students bugs the corporate finance section of the MFT, does a siren go off? How does a university map a broad, standardized test score back to a specific professor's syllabus?
So the mechanism behind this is where the real work happens. The university doesn't just receive, like, a single aggregate score for each student.
Oh, they don't?
No. They receive detailed subscores. It breaks down performance by specific subject areas. Then, the faculty and curriculum committees, which are groups of professors and administrators, they sit down in conference rooms and pore over these granular reports.
So they're actively looking at spreadsheets, trying to find the weak links.
Precisely. And notice how the document emphasizes teaching and learning. It isn't just about what is being taught by the professor. It is about what is actually being absorbed by the student.
Which fundamentally transforms the major field test from a mere final judgment into like an active diagnostic tool.
Exactly, like plugging a car into a computer or the mechanic to see exactly why the check engine light is on.
Yes. Let's use that corporate finance example again. If the data shows the cohort scored in the 85th percentile for marketing ethics, but fell to the 40th percentile in corporate finance.
The faculty committee has empirical proof that a gap exists. They don't have to guess. They can look at the finance courses and ask some really hard questions.
Like what kind of questions?
Like, is the textbook outdated? Are we not spending enough weeks on capital budgeting? Is the teaching method for this specific module ineffective?
So they aren't just trusting their gut feelings about how a semester went.
No, not at all.
Or relying on student evaluations that might just reflect whether the professor was entertaining or an easy grader. They have hard evidence.
And that forces uncomfortable but very necessary conversations. I mean, telling a tenured professor that their students are consistently failing to grasp core concepts is difficult.
I can imagine.
But having objective, standardized data removes the personal bias. It allows the institution to rewrite the syllabus based on reality. And that directly leads to better student learning outcomes for the next group that comes through the door.
Well, let's talk about the timeline of those changes, because education is ongoing. You tweak the finance syllabus, you update the textbook. But how do you know if those changes actually fix the problem?
Right, you need to follow up.
The document addresses this by stating the MFT allows SOU to demonstrate the strengths of the MBA program and to track longitudinal performance and trend analysis to evaluate program improvement efforts.
Because tracking longitudinal performance is the only way to measure systemic success. You just can't judge a massive educational institution on a single semester's performance.
Okay, I have to push back on this concept of tracking trends a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Because when I read longitudinal performance, I immediately compared it to tracking a long-term stock portfolio. You look at the graph over 5 or 10 years, you see the dips, you see the peaks, and you identify a trend.
Right.
But stocks are just numbers. MBA cohorts are totally different human beings every single year. One year, you might have a class full of highly motivated overachievers who form intense study groups.
And the next year, maybe the class chemistry is terrible and nobody studies.
Exactly. How can you reliably track a trend when the human variables taking the test are constantly changing?
It is a totally valid critique of standardized testing. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to remember what SOU is actually trying to measure here.
Okay, what is that?
The text specifically says they are evaluating program improvement efforts, not just the individual students. They are looking for statistical smoothing over time.
Sure, statistics smooth out over a decade, but what about the student paying full tuition in year 3 of a downward trend? Are they just collateral damage while the university gathers enough data points to realize the new finance textbook is terrible?
Well, that is the inherent tension in higher education. The university moves like a cargo ship, not a speedboat.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
It takes time to implement a new curriculum, and it takes time to see if it worked. If the finance scores drop slightly one year, SOU isn't going to instantly fire the professor or throw out the syllabus. Because, as you noted, it might just be a less motivated cohort.
A fluke, basically.
Right. But if those finance scores slowly degrade over 3 or 4 consecutive years, despite different students taking the class, the human variable is factored out. You have identified a definitive negative trend in the program itself.
Ah, so the fault lies with the ship, not the passengers.
Yes, exactly. The university uses the test to monitor these slow-moving currents. And conversely, it allows the school to actively and confidently demonstrate its strengths to stakeholders.
Meaning they can brag about the good stuff.
Yeah. If SOU can show a steady 10-year upward trend in their students' grasp of international business law, that is a powerful data-backed statement to accreditors, alumni, and prospective students.
It is no longer just a marketing slogan. It is a proven historical baseline of success.
Absolutely.
Which is an incredible selling point. Look at our 10-year track record.
Yeah.
But looking purely at your own historical baseline has its limits, right? Internal trends are great, but are you just the fastest runner in your own neighborhood?
Right. You need a broader context.
SOU realizes they can't operate in a vacuum. The document outlines a final, crucial step. Stepping into the national arena.
Which is point number 5.
Yes, and here's where it gets really interesting. The final point in the document states that the MFT helps to measure the program's effectiveness and the MBA students' performance against programs at similar institutions nationwide using comprehensive national comparative data.
And for anyone evaluating a program for themselves, the phrasing here is incredibly deliberate.
Oh, it really is. It doesn't say SOU compares itself to all other business schools. It specifically targets similar institutions nationwide.
Because benchmarking against the entire country would be statistically useless.
How so?
Well, you wouldn't want to compare a regional MBA program's aggregate scores directly to the scores of an Ivy League institution with a multi-billion-dollar endowment.
Right, that wouldn't make any sense.
The resources, the faculty salaries, the strictness of the student selection process, they are entirely different universes. Comparing them would yield no actionable data.
It would be comparing apples to oranges. SOU wants to find other apples.
Exactly. By utilizing comprehensive national comparative data, SOU can isolate its exact peers. They look for schools with similar funding levels, similar student demographics, and similar regional footprints.
They find the universities fighting in the exact same weight class.
Which eliminates every possible excuse.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If you are comparing yourself to your exact peers and you are falling behind in the data, you can't blame a lack of funding. You can't blame a smaller library.
If the school in the next state over, with the exact same budget and the exact same type of students, is scoring 20 points higher on the MFT, the problem is your curriculum.
It is the ultimate reality check. And notice how the text explicitly highlights a dual purpose here. It measures both the program's effectiveness and the MBA student's performance.
So the data is pulling double duty.
Yes. It isn't just telling the university administration how robust its curriculum is compared to rival schools. It is telling the students themselves how competitive they're going to be when they enter the national job market against graduates from those similar institutions.
It is a reality check for everyone involved. The professors find out if their lectures hold up on a national stage, and the students find out if their hard work actually measures up to their direct competition for jobs.
It completely reframes why you would take a massive, grueling test at the end of a degree.
It really does. It isn't a final hurdle to jump over. It is a calibration tool before you step out into the professional world.
It guarantees that the credential you just spent years earning means something tangible, not just within the walls of SOU, but out in the broader economy.
Okay. Let's take a breath and recap the journey of this single document, because we have covered a lot of ground today.
We really have.
What started as a simple administrative list explaining a frustrating end-of-program test is actually a highly sophisticated 5-point mission.
Right.
The major field test serves to accredit the SOU MBA program and hold it accountable to external standards. It acts as an internal diagnostic tool to pinpoint specific weaknesses in the curriculum. It proves the program's strengths over time, tracking historical trends to avoid knee-jerk reactions. And finally, it serves as the ultimate reality check, benchmarking both the program and the students against exact national peers.
When you look at the totality of what this one test accomplishes, it is really worth connecting this back to your own life and career.
Yeah, how does this apply to you listening?
Well, while this document specifically focuses on an MBA program, the underlying philosophy applies anywhere. Whether you are taking a mandatory corporate training module, trying to learn a new coding language through a boot camp, or evaluating a certification program for yourself, you should ask a fundamental question.
Which is?
How is the entity teaching you measuring itself, and not just its students?
Are they just handing you a grade, or are they subjecting their own teaching methods to an objective external reality check?
Exactly. A program that welcomes external measurement and actively seeks out national comparative data is a program that is confident in its ability to adapt and improve.
It shows they are actually invested in the outcome of your education, not just the process of taking your money.
Spot on.
You know, looking back at all of this, there is one lingering detail from that final point in the document that I want to leave you with.
Oh, what's that?
SOU explicitly states that this nationwide comparative test measures both the program's effectiveness and the MBA students' performance against national data.
Right.
The document inherently links those two things together in the same data set.
They are basically two sides of the same educational coin.
But think about this. If a comprehensive nationwide comparative test suddenly reveals a significant, unexpected drop in performance at SOU, where does the ultimate responsibility actually lie?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Is that drop a failure of the curriculum's design and the program's effectiveness? Or is it simply a failure of the student's execution and effort?
Yeah.
When the check engine light comes on, how do you know if the mechanic built the engine wrong or if the driver just doesn't know how to drive? Something for you to mull over.
Got it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.